Hi, my name is Jackson, and I'm one of two co-founders for a team called Revision, and our goal is to improve student-professor communication. Our initial concept was we wanted to connect professors to artists to help them visualize metaphors in class. We really were passionate about this idea because in our experience, and in many of our classmates' experiences, professors who had a lot of strong visuals were often the professors we remembered and felt we learned a lot from. Our initial hypotheses were, one, that students learn better when professors incorporate visuals into their lectures. We thought this due to our experience and conversations with friends. Second, that professors want to improve their lectures. We thought this because, in my experience and the professors I've talked to and had, most of them were invested in improving, although there were exceptions. Third, that professors can explain technical concepts to non-technical people. This really required validation and was central to our premise, because we wanted to connect professors to artists, and often artists are non-technical. Fourth, that visual artists can visualize concepts. We base this on our understanding of how art can capture abstract ideas, such as those in high-level technical courses. Fifth, that by connecting artists to professors, we can facilitate metaphor creation. We hope to borrow both the domain knowledge and the visualization knowledge to help create high-quality lecture material. The way this played out in our business model canvas is that we had the two customer segments, content creator and professor. Their value proposition for the content creator was hourly work, and they could build their portfolio. For the professor, we could improve class results by using more intuitive metaphors, and we could provide them feedback on their presentation from a very informed gaze. Later on, this feedback will come back. Our revenue would come as a percentage of contracts between the content creator and professor, and the relationships that we have with these people would be long-term for the professor and more short-term for the content creator. To actually test our hypotheses, we went and interviewed professors and artists. The professors we interviewed were mostly in the math and science faculties. The artists we interviewed came from a breadth of vocations, as we wanted to see what the different perspectives would provide for a lecture format. From our testing, we learned the initial plan would not work, and there were several reasons why. First, teaching artists was more challenging than we anticipated. It was very difficult for a professor to convey a technical idea to someone with no technical background. This made it hard for artists to have the deep understanding required for visualization. In the image you can see, if I fully understand the dumbbell, I can now draw simpler versions of it to convey the idea to you. But, as you see on the right of the image, if I don't understand that, my drawings may provide mistaken or contrary information to the actual idea I want to convey. Another thing we learned was that professors were interested in improving their lectures. Specifically, professors were interested in feedback from students. So we took that idea and incorporated it into our pivot. So we pivoted to an idea where we hire a student in the professor's class to provide feedback on what lecturing techniques work for them. In this case, we would train the student on what to look for in the lecture, such as what metaphors did the professor use and how effective were they? What sort of techniques did the professor try to use to gather attention, to build the knowledge? In addition, the student would take note of when they lost focus, on what they struggled with, and when they lost track of the narrative. And that way, the professor could learn and improve the lecture immediately. This pivot came with a couple new hypotheses. First, that professors want student feedback on their lectures. We thought this because of our previous conversation, which validated this hypothesis. Second, that students can be trained to identify lecture techniques. This seemed possible because once you became aware of them, my partner and I realized that they are very prevalent and they're used all the time in class, such as, oh, here's a metaphor. Did I understand it? No? Okay. Or, oh, the professor has said, here's the goal for the class. Now, for each section, do I still realize how it relates to the goal? Pieces like that seem to be teachable. Third, that students can evaluate the effectiveness of a technique for them, so they have the self-awareness to know if it's actually teaching them the material. This needed testing. Fourth, that feedback can be given and used in a timely manner to accommodate our previous concern of professor time. And fifth, that students can take notes on both class content and lecture style without losing focus or material. This led to this new business model canvas. In it, we have two customer segments, professors and student feedback providers. Our value proposition for professors is to improve student understanding and to provide immediate feedback on lectures so they can revise immediately. Students would be incentivized by a part-time pay. We would earn revenue from subscription fees for setting up this program and generate revenue from educational grants to support teaching. To test these new hypotheses, I attempted the process. It resulted in a useful revision after the first class I tried it on, in which I identified which metaphors worked for me and why, and the professor was able to use that information to refine his content. Unfortunately, to do so after every lecture would result in too much time being used. So this is something that we have to adapt with to figure out what is the correct ratio of note-taking versus revision time. In addition, from the testing, I realized that more research has to be done on what do we teach students to improve their feedback providing skills. To build this up, the plan is to run a pilot at the University of Waterloo, and then expand within the school, and then eventually outside of the school into other Canadian schools. The key takeaway is that we want to help professors see the student perspective by building a bridge between the two. That way, professors can actually see if they're getting through to students.